I want to talk about water. What's been going on in Christchurch is there was a water protest this past weekend. 2,000 people turned out to stop the water being taken locally by foreign companies, in particular Cloud9. They're taking New Zealand water and they're selling it for cheap, and they pay minimal amounts of money for it. But one of the problems is that there seems to be a division in the debate. Should we be charging Cloud9 lots of money for taking water, or should we not be exporting our water altogether? So I want to explore this a little bit. And joining me now is John Pfahlert from Water New Zealand. He's the CEO. John, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for your time. Hey, do you think, for a start, let's start with whether we should be even allowing foreign companies to take water out and export it. Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, we don't really have a view one way or the other. Our view has generally been that if it's legal, if Environment Canterbury, if it fits within their regional plan to allocate water on that basis, then it's really no different in principle to allocating it to any other industrial use or a dairy farmer or providing water for local communities to use. In our view, what needs to be done is that if we are going to have a conversation about pricing it, then the conversation needs to be pricing it for everybody. So rather than just focusing on picking on water bottlers as a class of person and wanting to charge them, let's have a broader, more principled conversation about making sure that everybody pays. And in our view, everybody should pay. And so if it was up to us, we'd be making sure that dairy farmers and industrial users like, milk treatment plants and every residential consumer was paying their fair share. So what we say is that if you meter water, you measure it, then you value what you pay for, you value what you use, and you can't really manage properly what you're not measuring. So if you're a residential consumer in Christchurch, then you'd be paying the same as they do in Auckland. So rather than taking it from an emotive point of view that says that exporting water in plastic bottles to China and all the associated arguments that get raised when you start having that conversation, let's take it back to a more principled conversation about, should we be charging, and if we are, let's make sure that we have a conversation about that. Of course, that raises a whole lot of other issues around ownership, but I think they're ultimately ones we're going to have anyway.
Yeah, we're just deferring the inevitable. But we
are. I mean, like the National Party previously said that I think no one owned the water, and then the Labor Party has said that everybody owns the water. But, inevitably, if you get to a conversation around pricing water and making sure that the people who use it pay for it, you have to have a conversation about ownership. And Water New Zealand wouldn't have a problem with starting that conversation either, because I think inevitably, in a resource-constrained world, we're going to have that conversation at a community level, and we're going to have to deal with issues like iwi Maori ownership.
John, I think I disagree. I mean, look, I think you make a fair point about everybody paying for water, but I think I disagree with you in saying that using water for bottling and exporting is exactly the same, or is the same in principle as using water for your farm. I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, I think the thing is that we can understand that a New Zealand farm owner who is ploughing the land and providing money back for the resource that they are producing is of much more value than somebody, especially somebody offshore, who's just bottling water at a cost of $2,000 and then exporting it. I mean, we are being gypped by these people.
Yeah, but the amount of water that's being used in dairy farming is orders of magnitude more than anyone.
Yeah, but do we have the water for it, John? Have we got the water?
Well, yeah, clearly we do. I mean,
and what's the problem?
Well, yes, that's right. What is the problem? I mean, the amount of water that we're talking about, the people who are opposing it make it very emotive. They talk about billions of litres, but in reality, if you're talking about the amount of water that individual dairy farms use to make their productive, businesses operate, we're talking about, volumes of water, orders of magnitude more than that. So I'm not entirely sure it's about the amount of water. I think it's more to do with the type of use and where it's going to. And the issues get conflated with, you know, whether we should be putting it in plastic bottles, you know, should we be charging so many cents per litre? And, you know, the Minister for the Environment is wading in saying, well, they can't do that without charging it on domestic consumption as well because it breaches WTO rules. And, you know, there are all sorts of good practical public policy reasons why it's difficult to do. But I don't think we should avoid having that conversation at some point. And, you know, I fully understand the community marching about it. You know, I mean, it does, I guess if I was living there as well, it would seem perfectly unreasonable that officials can't charge for the use of a resource. But all I'm saying is it raises a whole bunch of issues that on the face of it aren't that easy to deal with.
John, I don't have a lot of time, but I just want to get something from you. It sounded a little bit like you were suggesting that perhaps part of the reason that we are so worked up about it is because it is a Chinese company and there might be an element of xenophobia. Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm suggesting that, yes. I mean, the question is if the same company was paying, let's say, 10 cents a litre and the money was going to, I don't know, forest restoration or wetland restoration in Canterbury, would all these people be supporting the proposal? And the answer is probably not. There'd probably still be opposition from various parts of the community. So I suspect that it's a concern that someone is being seen to take a resource. At the moment, the argument is because they're taking it for free and making money out of it. But I have a funny feeling that even if they were paying for it, there'd be another bunch of people out there in the community who would be saying it's not a wise use of resource.
Because they're Chinese.
Either because they're Chinese or because we shouldn't be exporting plastic or something.
Oh, okay.
You know, there'd be a whole bunch of other reasons that would then pop up.
All right. John, thank you for that. I appreciate it. That's John Pfahlert, Water New Zealand CEO. I'd like to talk about this, actually. I want to know whether you think it's okay that we are exporting water. It's a major problem in Christchurch right now. I oppose it big time unless they're paying for it. What do you think? 0800 80 1080, 472 1035.